having a great morning. Let's see, just waiting for this. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we work and live, acknowledging the stories, traditions, living cultures of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples on this land and committing to building a brighter future together. Today, we've got lots of folk who are joining us. That includes our NDIS participants and family members of NDIS participants. We also include providers and support coordinators, people that support our members. So our information that we share is very general. It's not specific. If you do have a specific question at all, we do always encourage you to ask the NDIA directly. So Leap-In is a plan manager. We work in this space. We have our Leap-In presents to help our community understand more about using the NDIS, and we share the information that we have and help people to navigate throughout this system as well. So now I'm going to talk about the two things that are happening you might have heard. So firstly, I want to talk about there's some changes that you might have heard. So there is a new portal, there is a new system. I'm going to detail some information around that. There is also at the same time a change in the communication that NDIS participants or members are having as well. And there is a plan to look at longer plans happening. So I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail around this. So when we first talk about, you might have heard of something called PACE. So PACE is the new computer system that has been introduced. And the plan is that it's going to replace the existing customer relationship management system that the agency has had. So the NDIS is in its 11th year now, so it's certainly a good time to review, and that's what the agency has done. They've reviewed the system and developed PACE. Now, PACE has been trialled. It was first trialled in Tasmania, and then the decision was to start rolling it out. So it started from October last year, and the plan is now that people will move to PACE across 18 months. So some of the information I'm going to share today is not yet here that we can see, but we will see changes come in as more and more users and the agency uses the system more. So the system is absolutely designed to improve the participant as well as the provider experience. It's giving a lot more clear information, sharing more information around how decisions are made, and allowing the processes that are being followed to be more consistent nationally. Absolutely will help implement recent changes to the Act as well. Now, I've got a small video that I'm going to share as well, and this one's from the NDIS information that they have. I will also be sharing with you links on their site where you can access information either as participants or providers. PACE.
NDIS Participant Portal. Overview.
To help us deliver an improved participant experience and our new computer system, we built the new My NDIS Participant Portal. Participants with an NDIS plan in our new computer system will be able to use the My NDIS portal. The new My NDIS portal is more accessible, and it will help participants, nominees and child representatives to easily view and manage their NDIS plan. Participants and their representatives can use the portal to view their budget, view a budget breakdown of each support category, including the total funds available, see all claims against their budget, view plan information and personal details, and view their inbox. Self-managed participants who are using the My NDIS portal can also claim against their self-managed funds by selecting Make a Claim from the menu. New participants using the My NDIS portal for the first time will need to link the NDIS to their MyGov account. Nominees and child representatives can see all the participants they act on behalf of by linking the NDIS to their MyGov account.
For more information, visit ndis.gov.au.
Okay, so that's giving you a little bit of a preview as well. The information around PACE, around the system changes that we're walking through, if you go to the NDIS site, you're going to see this link here. So it's scrolling down the bottom of the page. It then changes, and the page is in development, so it is constantly being updated. And Christy Lee has also shared a link to that, so you can certainly go in later. That's where the videos are. That's where any training systems and further updates are. So keep an eye on that one. Maybe even bookmark it after today's webinar. So the question is, when will people go onto PACE? So anyone who is now coming onto the NDIS and gaining access will start on PACE. For existing participants, they will roll onto PACE after what they call their plan reassessment, a change of circumstances, or once their plan expires. So once those activities happen, you'll then move on to the new system as well. And I can see that there is a question coming up. We are going to answer some of that information. So I just want to acknowledge I can see that question. Now, I'm going to reflect as well that there are changes that are happening around how the NDIS communicates and supports participants. So let's step through what that looks like. So there is new terminology being used. So making connections has now 3 very clear entry points for how someone will connect to someone in order to receive disability supports. And then there's some changes to the NDIS plan process. So I'm going to step through each of these bubbles and explain that a little bit further. So when we look at making connections, we might have heard previously words such as early childhood partners and local area coordinators would be something that most of us would be familiar with. So there's 3 entry points that someone may connect to receive either disability supports or connect to the NDIA. Now, we hear from Minister Shorten all the time that the NDIA is not meant to be the only support. It's not meant to be the only canoe in the ocean. I think he uses an analogy like that. So firstly, early connections are available to support children that are younger than 9 and their families. So for someone who's younger than 6, they have delays in development. So under 6, we still don't need a diagnosis to access some support, but then younger than 9 would hold that disability. And that movement happened last July. They moved everyone under 9 to the early connections. And the idea of that was really because these partners really do know a lot about what type of consistent supports and how to connect people. So what happens in early connections is that you'll receive your support regardless of whether your child is eligible for the NDIS. So that might include connections with things such as mainstream and community supports. They might be putting them in touch with peer groups or community organisations that can deliver some type of support. They can provide practical information that's relevant to your child's development, and they'll absolutely help apply to the NDIS if indeed that is the appropriate area as well. Now, early connections might see early support periods that could be offered between 3 to 6 months or right up until 12 months. And I indicated earlier that we're probably going to start seeing longer plans, not necessarily in early connections, because at early connection stage, there are large changes in development or in needs. So usually you'll see a 12-month plan. So there's no sort of change there, but early connections is what we see now as the terminology used to support early childhood. Now, local area coordinators is the community connection that's available to anyone with a disability aged 9 to 64. They absolutely can help you access mainstream and community supports or peer groups. So community connections are available to anyone with a disability, regardless of their citizenship or visa status. So the local area coordinators are providing access to further supports as well. They will help you apply for the NDIS and guide you through that information and evidence that is needed, and that is then provided to the NDI planner if you're eligible. And I'm going to talk about the planning process shortly. There is one further means of making connections, and that's direct to the NDIA. So people are connected directly to the NDIA if they are in a remote or a very remote area, if they have complex support needs, or if they're in residential aged care or in a hospital or justice setting. Now, there's been significant work around this, particularly when we look at we know that our remote and our very remote participants are very much underrepresented. So where they don't have the local area coordinators, people will be able to connect directly to the NDIA to receive support and assistance in regards to their disability. So that's how we connect, and that's a little bit of a change. Now, the next piece, and I've got arrows, and there's a new word there, which is check-ins, and I'm going to talk about check-ins as well. So when we are creating our plan, when we're using our plan and changing our plan, that contact is now direct with the agency. So the agency has listened to the fact that lots of participants found it really hard. We would go to an LAC potentially and go to the agency, but there wasn't a consistent contact in the agency. So they've started introducing the check-ins, and I'm going to talk about that more, but ongoing communication to help support. And you are going to be meeting now with the person who is making the decisions around your plan. So the planning meeting will be direct with the NDIA planner. So you want to be talking at that time with them about what your goals are. They would be discussing budgets. It's really important that we start talking about how you want to manage your plan. And I'm going to give you some tips around what we call my providers and how my providers are recorded. And there's also changes around consent. You'll want to check your bank details are correct, particularly if some of your supports are paid direct to you, and discuss any changes in your life or anything that you can see might change the types of supports that you need. So that meeting could be face-to-face, it could be online, there's no change there. But what's different is that you will be meeting direct with that planner, or sometimes they might be referred to as a delegate. Now, there's a new term called My Providers. So within the PACE portal, you will be listing some of the My Providers, and I'm going to share that information. So you'll be telling your planner about who you want to work with. You can do that at several times. You can do that at that planning meeting, plan implementation meeting, or your check-ins, or at any time if you contact the NDIA. So the earlier you give them that information, we find that it's a smoother transition. So when you're going to your planning meeting, you'll be wanting to make sure that your plan manager is set up with both the My Provider and the plan manager roles. And that needs to be from the plan start dates. So that means that it'll be nice and smooth for you, and it will allow, if you add Leap In, for example, it would allow us to manage your plan and pay any invoices for you. Now, previously, this would have been done as what we called a service booking for your plan. So My Providers is going to replace this. You'll also be telling your planner if you are using providers for these 3 areas. And I think this was answering one of the questions that came up earlier. So if you're using specialist disability accommodation, home and living supports and behaviour supports, there are changes around those support categories, and I'm going to explain and cover that off as well. Of course, you're still continuing to share your plan goals or any needs that you have and ask for support for your disability needs. So in terms of what is different for NDIS participants, you'll be endorsing providers. So providers will be My Providers. There's no more service bookings required for registered providers. There's some changes to the support categories and items, as well as something that we haven't yet seen but has been alluded to is the release of funding at intervals. Now, I just have seen a question I'm going to answer now before I go too far forward. So someone is asking about changes around access. So the changes around access are reflected on the NDIS website. You will find that the access request form that was previously available on the website is no longer present. I've gone to nds.gov.au. We go to, in this point here, improving the way we deliver, and you choose either I'm a person needing disability support or a participant, and it will step you through and it will walk you through those new roles and how someone accesses the scheme, because inherently both the LACs and the early connections are providing further connection, and sometimes some people might receive community support as well. So let's talk about the check-ins. I've mentioned the check-ins a couple of times here. So what a check-in is, a regular meeting that would be happening before your reassessment date. and at any time really, to see how your plan is working for you. So the idea is that you're going to have more contact. If you haven't been using your funding, or if you've been using too much, it might be that the plan needs to be adjusted, and the system is really built to allow any changes to happen really seamlessly. So we're going to see more regular check-ins. I don't know how regularly they are because we're still seeing people coming onto the pay system. So when that happens, they're going to ask how your plan is going, your budgets, how you've used your funding, and your reports that you've had, or anything that's new. It might be that you're finding it really hard. I know that we often talk to members who tell us that they're waiting on lists and time can go past. At the check-in, they might be able to give you some other suggestions, other strategies for other things, other supports, rather than continue to wait and not be able to use your plan. Now, having a check-in doesn't mean that the plan will need to change. Other things to be aware of is that there is a new look to your plans and budgets. Now, some of it looks the same. Some things like your About Me and your goals, very similar to what we've seen before. You're going to see stated and flexible supports, but your new plan will be built by the support categories. In plan management, we've often seen stated supports. It's a little bit different. I'll talk to you about that when I get to the categories, because some categories don't have full flexibility anymore. So the budgets are listed at the support category level, giving you more flexibility. So you might see, for example, if we see our core budget, we've always seen core to be quite flexible. You might just see the total figure rather than line by line entries, and you can then choose to use it across the supports that are left in daily living, social community participation, and consumables. There is a new support type in pay. So we previously had core, capital, capacity building, and transport was different. Transport is now featured under recurring. So if you're someone that has previously received transport funding, it would have been funding that you would have received direct to your bank account. It's now under what we call a recurring category as well. So let's talk about those support category changes. So PACE is introducing 6 new support categories, and these are the stated supports, so they're not as flexible. And I'm going to do a comparison around some of those changes for you. So we've got home and living, which is the new support category, specialist disability accommodation, specialist disability, young people living in residential aged care. To summarise that support, it's something that has moved across from a previous funded support. It's very small numbers of participants who would be having that. If you've had something similar, then that would be a change for you in terms of support categories. Behaviour support, assistive technology, repairs and rental, and transport, which is that recurring, as I said, has its own support categories. So when we talk about home and living changes, there were changes previously. So if you've previously used funding for supported independent living, individual living options, or medium-term accommodation under core, they now have a new category. The line items haven't changed, but there is a new category, which is home and living. As you can see here, SDA is now under its own support category. So the funding is no longer flexible. Where people might have used their core funding flexibly, you need to be talking to the planner if you need to have supports in this area. Assistive technology, maintenance, repair and rental. So if you have previously used funding for assistive technology under core, and we've got the items on the right, so that's including repairs and maintenance or any AT rental, early childhood flexible AT, and the flexible equipment package, which is for changing needs, that has its own support category as well, and that is stated so it's not as flexible. So if you need to have those items, you need to be making sure that the planner is considering that for you. In the capacity building, as you can see, behaviour support has split from what was capacity building, improved relationships. Recurring transport is brand new. There is that young people in residential aged care item, which is a cross-billing payment for those that are in residential aged care. Like I said, it's a very small group of participants overall, so it's not necessarily something that everyone sees. This information that I'm sharing is available on the NDIS site. I'm going to talk about some things that we have heard about may be coming with the system, and I've got the big to be confirmed. So at the moment, as plan managers, we are supporting members who have PACE plans. It hasn't happened yet, so it's not to say that the system won't change in future. There has been discussion that funding would be released at intervals. So if you have a longer plan, like a 3-year plan, you might only see 1 year's worth of funding released at a time. In the initial trial, there were only 1-year plans in place. So if you have a 3-year plan, you might just see 1 year at a time. And what this would do is if you did underspend your funding across that allocation, then that money would roll over. And likewise, if you overspent the amount that was available, your next release would see that come off. So in terms of what's different for providers are endorsed. Under My Providers, there's no more service bookings required for registered providers. There are changes to the support categories and how they're treated. And there's changes also to the views and the consent process. So consent is something different around participants' plans, and I'm going to step through that. Once you are endorsed under My Provider, it's important to remember you will also need to have the participants' consent to view parts of the plan that are relevant to them. So being endorsed doesn't automatically give you consent. You will want to have both of those covered off at once. So as My Providers, you will have increased visibility. You will be able to see basic information such as dates of birth and contact details for both the participant as well as their nominees. However, with consent, depending on your role, you would be able to see current or active goals. And it's really important for support coordinators or recovery coaches to be able to see this information. So you'll want to, if you are in a support coordination type role, ensure that you are asking for the consent as well. I will also preface that we are looking for any support coordinators who are attending today to let us know, because we are preparing some communication and recommendations specific to your role. So support coordinators, once they have that consent, will be able to see old goals, the budgets, the different fund management types, and more information around community and other supports and informal supports as well. Plan managers, we have increased views now, be able to see old goals and old budgets, and there is a transition. This is a new system, so we will be able to see that in future. We will be able to see funded supports that are plan managed, and also a budget available for self-managed and NDIA managed supports. So changes for us is that we will be endorsed at that planning meeting by choosing under My Provider. So being prepared, letting whoever you support to go into that planning meeting with their information, let them know who you want as a plan manager, let them know if they're listing or working with certain providers. The more preparation you can do, ultimately, you're going to have a better result. That's what we've always found. And we also have pre-planning meetings, so we can talk to people and help them prepare as well, and help them with recommendations, particularly around things like goals. We no longer have service bookings. We will have an increased view of the plan, so we'll be able to see more to understand how to support the people that we look after. And there's changes to support items. So there's some new items that have been created. So during the transition, there will be 2 portals that you may need, if applicable, in your service delivery. So the My Place Provider portal will still continue to support existing participants. So there's only the start of people moving on to PACE now. The My Place Provider portal will stay until everyone is transitioned, and then you'll find, in addition to that, the My NDIS Provider portal is the new portal for providers with PACE participants. Now, I am also going to show a visual, so I've got the address here. This is available. We're going to share a link to it via the NDIS site down the bottom of their page. They have provider and participant tools on PACE. There's also a training system. They will issue further updates because the system is very new, and there's going to be things that are discovered and improved as it rolls out. If you have enjoyed today, we want to say thank you very much for your attendance.